Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, episode 468, Back to the Brain Room. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters. Well, today I got Ambrosia and Meryl with me, two cats. They're probably both out of camera range now, but perhaps they'll come into camera range shortly. Anyway, so today I will continue with the selected prose of Fernando Pessoa, edited and translated by Richard Zenith. Here, well, even though this prose is about 100 years old, it still has some interesting philosophical elements, as you shall see. Later on in the program, it's back to the brain room. Here, a look at decisions we make in our lives and even between lives, and how these decisions affect us and those around us. Today's show will feature background footage from Rumbling Bald. Rumbling Bald is located between Chimney Rock and Lake Lure, North Carolina. To get there from Asheville, North Carolina, take Highway 74A East. Go through Chimney Rock. Shortly after Chimney Rock, as you enter Lake Lure, off to the left is a road called Boys Camp Road. So you take a left on Boys Camp Road off of Highway 74A, and you follow it, maybe a mile or two. You'll come to a crest of a hill. And at this crest, you take a left into the parking area for Chimney Rock State Park. Here, you start down the trail. Well, the trail splits. I went off to the right this time. So, now, let's continue with the selected prose of Fernando Pessoa, edited and translated by Richard Zenith. Thus, the pagan religion is in harmony with the three natural spheres of human experience, with the essence of nature as it comes to us, with the essence of humanity itself, and with the essence of human nature in its social progress, or, put it more simply, with the essence of civilized human nature, or, simpler still, with the essence of civilization. Now, let's go to page 212 of the selected prose of Fernando Pessoa, edited and translated by Richard Zenith. Doing something contrary to what everyone else does is almost as bad as doing something because everyone else does it. It shows a similar preoccupation with others, a similar attention to their opinion, a sure sign of absolute inferiority. That's why I abhor people like Oscar Wilde and others who are intent on being immoral or disparaging, and on impinging paradoxes and delirious opinions. No superior man stoops so low as to judge someone else's opinion worth contradicting. For the superior man, others don't exist. He is his own other. If he wants to imitate someone, It's himself he tries to imitate. If he wants to contradict someone, it's himself he endeavors to contradict. He strives to offend his own life in its most intimate reaches. He plays tricks on his own opinions. He has long conversations with the sensations he feels, talking down to them. And every man that exists is me. I have all society inside me. I am my best friends and my truest enemies. The rest, what's on the outside, from the hills and plains to people, and is all just landscape. The great defect of work and effort is that they can become habits. The same defect pertains to inaction. It tends to become a habit. The right way for the superior man to be contrary is to refrain from having habits or opinions or a definite individuality. But it's not that we shun opinion and habits so as to smile at the opinions and habits of others. To have a fixed personality, regular habits, and consistent opinions is to belong to oneself. We should always change our opinion, personality, and intentions without that opinion or ever coinciding with other people's. The superior man's efforts should all be focused on trying to forget that the outer world exists. Now, let's go to page 214, continuing on to page 215. Between the theoretical life and the practical life yawns an abyss, over which a few unsocial, more individual people are bridges. He who rules is he who wills, the servant of scattered, anonymous thoughts that, as such, are not thoughts. Let those who think via other people's minds be the ones who act, since they exist only for acting. Let us retreat to the blithe and futile pastime of theories, disabused of any possibility of somehow acting on others or of being more than foreigners in this life. Disdainers of all ideals, particularly when they aim at happiness on earth for others, since happiness can only be an ideal for ourselves. We live apart, like those other initiates who live for the soul beyond intelligence, and who likewise want and hope for nothing from life. Thus, the ironist and the adept will walk together through the ruins of Solomon's temple and across that nearby plain where the master long ago was buried. Now, let's go to page 287 and continuing on to page 288 of the selected prose of Fernando Pessoa, edited and translated by Richard Zenith. I was born in a time when the majority of young people had lost faith in God for the same reason their elders had believed in God without knowing why. And since the human spirit naturally tends to make judgments based on feeling instead of reason, most of these young people chose humanity to replace God. I, however, am the sort of person who is always on the fringe of what he belongs to, seeing not only the multitude he's a part of, but also the wide open spaces around it. That's why I didn't give up God as completely as they did, and I never accepted humanity. I reasoned that God, while improbable, might exist, in which case he should be worshipped, whereas humanity, being a mere biological idea and signifying nothing more than the animal species we belong to, was no more deserving of worship than any other animal species. The cult of humanity, with its rights of freedom and equality, always struck me as a revival of those ancient cults in which animals were treated as gods, or the gods had animal heads. Now, let's go to page 289, continuing on to page 290 of the selected prose of Fernando Pessoa, edited and translated by Richard Zenith. I asked for very little from life, and even this little was denied me. A nearby field, a ray of sunlight, a little bit of calm along with a bit of bread, not to feel oppressed by the knowledge that I exist, not to demand anything from others, and not to have others demand anything from me. This was denied me. Like the spare change we might deny a beggar, not because we're mean-hearted, but because we don't feel like unbuttoning our coat. Sadly, I write in my quiet room, alone as I have always been, alone as I will always be, and I wonder if my apparently negligible voice might not embody the essence of thousands of voices, the longing for self-expression of thousands of lives, the patience of millions of souls resigned like my own to their daily lot, their useless dreams, and their hopeless hopes. In these moments, my heart beats faster because I'm conscious of it. I live more because I live on high. I feel a religious force within me, a species of prayer, a kind of public outcry. But my mind quickly puts me in my place. I remember that I'm here on the fourth floor of the Rua dos Douradores. I feel drowsy. I look at my unlovingly hand resting on this half-written page and the cheap cigarette in my left hand, hovering over the fraying blotter. Me in this fourth floor room, interrogating life, saying what souls feel, writing prose like a genius or a famous author. Me, here, a genius. Now it is time for Back to the Brain Room. Well, before we go back to the brain room, we better know what the brain room is. Sure, we gotta know where we're going. And it's not a place we could get to readily. Although it is an important place. So, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the time period between life and death. That is, the time period after you die, but before you're born again, or before you reach heaven, or hell, or whatever other destiny you might have for eternity. So, before we start scooting off to these eternal destinations, or scooting off to our next life, there's this little time period, a gap of sorts. I don't know how long this time period is, perhaps just a few precious seconds, or perhaps a few hours or days. I'm assuming it's not too horribly long, so let's just go with a few hours or so. But there's this time after you die where you get to negotiate with God, or whatever higher powers that might be, in determining your next existence. You get to negotiate with them. Your next destiny isn't arbitrarily and cruelly assigned to you by some higher power. At least I like to think most of the time, if not all of the time, you get to negotiate a little bit. You have a little bit of say in your destiny for eternity, or your destiny for your next life. There's a little bit of flexibility here. Well, if God has a predestined fate for you in mind, especially when you integrate it, that is, sum it up over all of your lifetimes, or all of this life if you believe in a single lifetime. But we're summing up all your actions and deeds and letting God determine your fate for eternity, basically. And you seem like your fate would be sealed. But as I said, there's a little wiggle room, a little room for negotiation. Why? Well, God has a certain destiny, or the higher power, whatever, has a certain destiny in mind for you. And maybe even you do too. Well, you negotiate with God and you figure out what destiny is best for you. But the key is there's many ways to get to that destiny. Hence the negotiation part. You don't have to do it one way or another way. There might be a dozen ways or more you can approach life. Sure. So, the way I think of it sometimes, it's like climbing up a hill or a mountain. There's several different paths you might be able to take, or several ways you could go. One approach might be easy at first and gentle, then towards the end, the hiking might be steep It might be difficult to accomplish your last section in life, so to speak. That is, life being a hike of sorts. However, on a different life hike, well, it might be tough in the beginning, very steep and arduous, but towards the end, it might be surprisingly level, or almost level, just a gentle incline to the summit. And there's other paths in between. Perhaps you want it steep in the middle, and easy at the beginning and easy at the end. So as I said, it could be hard on the beginning, easy on the end, or easy on the beginning, hard on the end. Maybe easy on the beginning and the end, but hard in the middle of life. So you have to figure out, well, what kind of life hike you want to do to get to your destination that you agreed to with God. That is, would be the best destination for you. So there's many paths in life to accomplish the same or similar objective. This is an important concept you need to hold on to, both for the brain room and for your present and current life. Sure. So, we negotiate with God. We negotiate our next destiny. Well, the brain room, I guess, at least to me, does have an appearance of sorts. Usually kind of dark. It might have a relatively low ceiling, little if any furniture. You just kind of sit on the floor. I kind of picture it being kind of gray commercial carpeting. Maybe even the gray commercial carpeting extending up onto the walls. Portions of the floor might be sloped, and other portions might be level. There's probably a few brightly colored fish tanks along the wall that are lit up, so thus providing a little entertainment and a little bit of light in the room. At the front of the room is the doorway into a bright white hallway. Every once in a while, you might see someone get up and go down and walk through the door, but they never come back. For that door is a door into a hospital. You walk from the brain room, which is like some metaphysical, ethereal place in another dimension, and somehow you go from another dimension into our dimensional reality, entering in through a hospital corridor and quickly entering a patient room where a mother is giving birth, and you are just an invisible soul coming in from the brain room in another dimension, and you are absorbed. Your soul enters into the baby that is being born, and you have a new existence as a new baby. Sure. So that's how you leave the brain room. You just kind of go down to the bottom of the room. Like as I said, I picture the door being on the bottom, towards the bottom of the sloped surface. So you might be sitting on top or laying down on top. You walk down some sort of slope or ramp and through the door into the brightly colored hallway and into a patient's room, and you absorb into a baby and become born. Remember, you're doing all this traveling as a soul. So you're like a ghost. You could go through doors and walls and all that. But anyway, and into a baby. So, That's how you leave the brain room. Now, how you get into the brain room after you die, I'm a little hazier on that. And it might vary considerably depending on the nature of your death. Who knows? Anyway, so you negotiate your future existence with God, and next thing you know, you're born. Well, how wonderful. But we have to look at other things further. Well, we have to look at our attitude in life, for this is critical. We might have many wonderful, lofty goals, goals of love, compassion, goals of helping each other. Sure. But as we go through life and as we help each other, lift each other up, have compassion for each other, we have to watch our attitude here. What I'm getting at is it's best to approach this with a humble attitude instead of a prideful one. Remember, pride comes before the fall. So you don't want to mix arrogance and compassion too much. Better to have humility and compassion. Sure. Well, you might say in your prideful state, "Oh, I'm so compassionate. I help all these people. You do hardly nothing. Obviously, I'm going to go to a better existence after death than you will. I will be reborn into a better existence, or I'll go to heaven, and you'll have to be reborn as someone suffering. So sad, too bad for you. Too bad you don't have compassion."
Casey Waters Show. Producer, Casey Waters. Graphic editing, Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, caseywaters2@caseywaters.com.